Hi there and welcome back. It is now autumn in the Western Cape of South Africa and I'm working on some field-grown material, discussing what tools I use, what sealers and how to seal cuts, and preparing some trees to be lifted in spring. If you find the following content helpful, then you can thank me by clicking the thanks button just below the video. I use the color change in the leaves to indicate when I can start working on the trees in autumn. When the leaves change color like this, it means that sap is receding. And that means that I can go in and do the cuts that I need to do without producing any new growth. This Trident or Chinese maple is the first tree that I'll work on today and demonstrate and discuss the various techniques that I use and considerations that go through my head as I'm working on the trees. So as I'm going to be removing a lot of branches, it's important that I have the right tools that is going to make the job as easy as possible and quick. And for that purpose, I love to use these ARS professional shears. When I'm reducing branches that have developed in the field, I always want to reduce or cut them back to a set of buds. If you don't consider where the buds are and you make the cuts, then you might find that the growth or the new growth in spring is going to be a lot further away from where you actually want them to be. At this point in time, the cuts are made quite a distance away from the buds, as this will allow the sap to recede. If in contrast you make your cuts too close to the buds, there is a good chance that you will lose those buds as the sap recedes. In order to expose the trunk so that I can see it better, I'm now just going to go in and remove all of this extra growth and then expose the trunk line itself. When I have to remove or shorten branches that are too thick for the secateurs, then I like to use a saw. A very nifty little safety feature on these ARS saws is this clip that holds the blade open so that you don't cut your fingers off inadvertently. The process of field growing material for bonsai trees involve a lot of trunk chops, and it's always advisable to try and heal those cuts over as much as possible while the tree is still in the field, as it becomes a lot more difficult to do it once it's in a pot. With all the excess branches now removed, the trunk of this tree is revealed, and it is a tree that I think I will be taking out in spring. The trunk has gained sufficient girth, and the majority of the scars have been healed over quite adequately. There is one more cut that I would like to make, and that is in the apical area. The future trunk line of the tree I think is a little bit boring, going a bit straight here in this area, and so what I want to do is cut this section off, leaving the piece going off to the right intact, and this will become the future trunk line, which is a lot more of an interesting line in my opinion. I always like to seal my cuts as I make them, and for that purpose I like to use the product called Top Gin. It's a great sealer. You can apply it with a brush and spread it over the cut, and this will prevent bacteria or infection of this exposed plant tissue. Cuts that are roughly 5 millimeters or so in diameter are the cuts that I'm going to be sealing. Anything smaller than that I don't really generally bother with. So that's all the work that I'm going to do on this tree for the moment. The next time I'll be working on it will be in spring when I dig it out of the ground. Right next to that Trident maple is a Lagerstroemeria or Pride of India, which I've been field growing and was cut probably in spring, gave a lot of back budding, and that growth can now be pruned back in preparation for spring when I lift the tree. Once again, the indicator for me is when the leaves turn yellow or their autumn color, and I would take that as a sign that I can go in and prune the tree back safely without it producing any new growth. So let me just emphasize 1 or 2 points with regards to the timing of the pruning. If you're wanting to produce a lot of back budding on field grown material, the best time to do that is in late spring when the spring flush of growth has hardened off. Then I like to go and prune again in autumn if I'm going to be removing trees from the ground, so that I don't waste any energy, sap flow in the spring, as well as avoiding a bleeding sort of situation where the sap flow of the tree bleeds from the open wounds made in early spring. When I make my trunk chops, I generally don't pay too much attention to the angle of the chop itself. I certainly don't spend any time trying to shape them. As you can see, this chop was rather flat, and this tree is not going to be ready to lift in spring. However, as the new sap flow is now properly established, I can go in and remove the excess growth or the other branches so that I can focus the energy initially on the development of the new trunk line. So this is the branch that I've decided I'm going to be using for the future trunk line. When you make big trunk chops on field-grown trees, you have to be careful to reduce or remove too much growth at the same time, because you might find that portions, small or large, of the trunk may die back. So you must ensure that there's always a demand for the sap flow in the tree. The next step will be to allow this branch that I've kept as the new trunk line to become nice and strong, and the sap flow to establish itself 100% into that line. So more than likely, a few months into the next growing season, I'll be able to go back in and shape this original trunk chop at a better angle so that the healing can start to take place. Next up, I have another Trident maple, which, just like all the others, was originally grown from seed. A moment ago I mentioned how that when you make a big trunk chop, sometimes a portion of the trunk dies back. This very substantial trunk is a good example of that. Fortunately, there was a viable bud on that side of the trunk, and that has been allowed to grow into the branch that you see now. However, in a season or two, I'll probably go back and reduce this dead portion and shape that better so that the callus can begin to roll over it. One of the not so nice sides of field growing are weeds and controlling the weeds. I'm really happy with the way that this Trident maple trunk has developed, and as you saw a moment ago, the very horizontal flat root system is as a result of the tiles that I used to develop the trees on. Once again, you can see a rather flat trunk chop and the result thereof. But now that the trunk that I wish to keep and develop into the future tree is fully established, I can now remove this back growth. In the near future, my intention is to go and recut this back section here, the original trunk chop, and shape it better. This will enable the callus to start forming over this wound. Next up, I have another Trident maple. I wanted to show you something that I think is pretty cool. When you see two branches coming into contact with each other and then being able to fuse, this is a good indicator that you can do approach grafts with that species quite easily. So yeah, once again, having selected which side of the tree I want to develop further into the future trunk line, I'm now going to eliminate the side that I don't need anymore. One of the reasons why I think that Trident maples make one of the most suited species to field growing is the ability that they have to heal over very large scars. I'll probably be lifting this tree in spring, as this new scar is not very large and will probably heal over in a season, maximum 2 seasons in a container. Moving along, this is another Trident maple with another big trunk chop that has been allowed several years to develop, or at least the growth on the sides of that trunk chop to develop. And now that a sap line has firmly established itself and the tree has regained its vigor, I'm able to now go back and make the cuts that I need to make, eliminating the growth that I don't want to keep, and then essentially directing all of the growth into the part that I want to keep and develop as the future tree. Most of the trees that I develop in the field have a single trunk line, but this tree presents an opportunity to have something a little bit different and have perhaps multiple trunks. I don't think this tree is ready yet to be removed in spring. I think I'm going to keep it in the ground for another season or two just to heal over these new scars. So this is going to be the last and final Trident maple featured in today's video. Essentially, it's a repeat of the same process that I've already demonstrated to you. Essentially making the cuts that I need to make prior to lifting the tree, and making them now in autumn results in no sap loss or bleeding in spring. If you found that content helpful and you'd like to thank me for it, please do so now by clicking the thanks button just below the video. This is the first and oldest scar on the tree. As you can see, it is thoroughly or completely healed over. This is the next scar up along the trunk, and probably a cut was much more recently made here, and that's why it's not completely healed yet. This was a trunk chop that was made a number of years ago, which resulted in a change of direction in the trunk line, and this has healed over very nicely. This last and final cut was probably made a year or two ago, and it is largely healed, but another season and it'll be completely gone. That brings me to the end of today's video. I hope that you've enjoyed the content, and if you haven't done so yet, please do like and subscribe to my channel. For more of the same, I release videos every second Friday. Take care and goodbye.